this session when I get a chance to link it to the slideshow. For now, you can actually view a video of the session from the first time I taught it, which was this last summer. So there should be a video right there linked that you can look at if you forget what I said. So my name is Stephen Elliott. I teach a class that is called Applied Technology or Career Technology or Exploratory, depending what site you're at. I teach a STEM elective. I love video games. I love fancy pens. I love spreadsheets. I am the ed tech at La Paz Middle School. And my philosophy when it comes to technology is about making our decision-making processes faster, giving us more time to be better teachers, build those relationships with our students. So yeah, it can get in the way sometimes when we have all this technology we have to navigate, but the purpose should be better communication, faster decision-making, and more clear understanding of what's going on in our classrooms or at our school sites when we've got a lot of data to sift through. So hopefully that comes through in my presentation today. And with that philosophy in mind, why don't we get started? And it's important to note that spreadsheets are something that you could take an entire course on them and it wouldn't quite tell you everything they can do. I mentioned yesterday in my intro to spreadsheets session that I don't know what all the functions do. There's hundreds of them, or at least there's more than 100. I know that. And I don't use all of them. So this is a collection of the ones I find most useful as a teacher. We're not going to really be talking about formatting spreadsheets, doing alternating colors, changing the text size, or sharing, or how you collect your data. We're going to assume in this session that you have data that you want to look at in a different way, or you want a spreadsheet that you can manipulate the data that you enter. If you need help with those things, I'm more than happy to answer questions. So don't feel like you can't interrupt me and ask a question if I say something that you want to know more about by unmuting, or even by putting in the chat. I will keep my chat open. But I do have some other trainings and stuff that you can look at on these linked on this slide right here. This is slide number 5. Spreadsheets don't have to be scary, which I presented yesterday, and a love letter to spreadsheets, which I presented at Spring Q last year. And a lot of my love and joy about data went into both of those. So they're there for you anytime that you need them. So let's get into it. What is a spreadsheet function? If you were in the slam this morning, you saw me do a very simple one, and this is an example right here. Some of these images are just for your reference if you feel like you need a reminder of what it might look like. It makes calculations, or it imports data, or it otherwise modifies the data that's in a spreadsheet so that you can see it in a different way. This can also be data from a different spreadsheet or data from another source, like an RSS feed from a website. I do not know how to do the RSS feed thing. I just know that it exists, and you can Google it if you need to know. But I do know something about importing data from a different tab on the same spreadsheet or from a different spreadsheet. So those are all things I could demonstrate if you're interested. But in essence, I think the sum function is a really great, simple place to start. It's very simple what it's doing. It's adding all the things in a range, and there's a specific way that it's done. So real quick vocabulary. You may come back to this if it's something that you're not familiar with. But whenever I talk about a range, I want you to know that those are the cells or the boxes in a spreadsheet where the function is going to work. So we can set a specific part of the spreadsheet where we want the calculations to happen. So whenever I say range, it'll be an alphabet letter and a number. And that will be the start cell, will be the first one. And then the end cell will be a colon plus the alphabet letter and the number of the last part. So you could see how that would make either a grid or a single line. One of the cool ones that I like about this second thing in my range calculation is A1 through C, no number. If it's C, no number, or an alphabet letter, no number, it's actually all the way down to the bottom of the spreadsheet, however long that spreadsheet is. So you can have a function that calculates no matter if there's new data entered at a different time or not. And I like to use that a lot. Criterion would be the conditions that apply to my function. So if I'm looking for a certain search term, or if I'm trying to create a number criterion that works, or the word null comes up sometimes, which means if a cell is blank. There's also some other math terms and symbology that is specifically associated with spreadsheets. If you get really into it, you might find that some of those things show up a lot. And I'll have links to where you can learn more about those things if you feel like you need them. And sometimes some functions, especially the VLOOKUP, which is a real popular one for PDSA cycles, will require you to create an index. And the index is the number that represents the column, even though columns are in alphabetical letters. It's really confusing, but I'll show you an example in a little bit. For example, if the range is A to C and the index is 2, you're going to be looking at column B, because A is 1, B is 2, C is 3. If that makes sense. And if it doesn't, don't worry. That's just something that might come up later. And finally, search key is something that might come up when you're learning about spreadsheets. The search key is the specific thing that you're looking for. So it could be in quotations, a line of text. It could be a number, or it could be a true false statement, which again, I'll have some examples of that later. So these 4 terms might come up again later. They're on slide 7, and they're available for you to think about. And you can also go through this slideshow on your own later and practice with some of the templates that are linked. That'll give you more time to get familiar and comfortable with these terms. All right, and most of the formulas or functions that we have will fall under this very typical kind of style. You always start with an equal sign, and then you type the name of the function. We do have autocomplete now in Google Sheets, so if you start to type a function, it's going to list all the ones that are available, so you don't really even have to remember what the function is. You just need to start typing it, and then you'll see, oh, it's that one, as long as you put the equal sign first. And then within parentheses, we often start with where will we do it, the criterion, what will we do, and sometimes there's in the formula, and I'll show you again what that looks like in a little bit, there's a little part that's in brackets, which are those kind of squarish parentheses right there. Optional criteria, which means if you enter nothing, there's a default value that shows up, and you don't have to enter anything there. All of this stuff is going to show up in most of the functions that we use today. Here's an example, and this is the example that I showed you in my SLAM, except this one has everything completed and ready. So for example, if we needed 2 Super Smash Bros. Games, this would change the amount that we needed to fundraise. We do not need that, so I'm going to put it back. If we needed 3 copies of the DLC, it would change automatically. You can see all of this stuff changing over here. You can play with this yourself if you like. And I think you can make a copy of it if you want to change some of the numbers there and play around with what that does. You can also edit this for your own purpose. The things that it uses, the spreadsheet functions that we got going on here, are the sum, which is the one that adds the thing that we need together, and the product, which helps us calculate sales tax and the number of units that we need for something. So that's the very simplest version of these functions. And then it's just a bird's eye view of what we're going to look at today. And we may not, in the first part of the section, get to the 5th one, which is titled Weird Ones, but we'll see what we have time for. So for each of these types, I kind of created these types myself based on what I use often. We're going to look at each one, and for each one, there's going to be a template, and for each template, there's going to be some kind of activity that you can try and I'll demonstrate as well. So there's math types. That makes sense. Sum, multiply, divide. There's import types. A VLOOKUP will import information from the spreadsheet into another spot. And then there's time ones. This one I may skip because it's not as useful, but I do use it sometimes. You'll be able to create representations of time-based calculations based on the time it is now, or due dates or calendar dates. So you can do things for project planning, creating minutes for a meeting, or calendars for teams and projects, so you can track how you're doing on a particular goal that you're trying to meet with your PLT or with your class or your students. Another one that I really like is the if and ifs functions. So COUNTIF is one we actually used yesterday in my intro my intro session that we did. SUMIF is useful as well. And then SUMIFS and COUNTIFs, which means you can put multiple criteria. So if these two things are true, count this number. If these three things are true, count this number. Count the number of times this term shows up. So all of this here is very useful in creating more complex spreadsheets. And then weird ones, I just find these really fun and interesting. And I set up a bunch of really cool activities where you can try them. I don't know how to pronounce this, but concatenate, I believe, is how it's pronounced, is a really weird one. Join, and a sparkline tutorial that I have, that's a super weird one, but also super fun. Anything that I don't talk about in the session right now, in the next half hour that we have together before our break, is going to be available to you to play with a template later if you use these slides. So again, if you do not have these slides, please either go to my pinned comment or go to the tiny URL link, which is on this sheet right here, so you can see these templates and use them. All right. Let's get into the first one, and in a couple minutes, you guys are going to play with this. So these are math type functions. They calculate numerical data. You cannot really do this with words or terms in a spreadsheet. It's mostly just for numbers. It does not require any other input but the range or the area where the calculations are going to happen. So it's a great place to start. Look at the ones that we have. Sum, product, divide, minus, average, convert, max, min, mode, and percentile. If you are actually percentile, should have a little parentheses there, just so they're all the kind of the same thing. Most of those, I think, if you're familiar with basic math, it should be pretty obvious. Max and min are specific to finding the highest or the lowest number in a range of numbers, which can be really helpful. And convert will change one type of number to another type of number. So if you have for example, a calculation in minutes, you can turn it into seconds, things like that. I believe you can also do like Celsius to Fahrenheit calculations really easily using a formula like that. So let's get into the next part right here. We're going to play around with this, and there's a template right here. So I want you to go to slide 12. If you're here, we're going to put a 7-minute timer on, and you can go to whichever challenge you like. I am going to demonstrate one of the first ones, and I'd like you to try it with me, but I'm going to be honest with our time. So we're starting that timer right now. I'm clicking on this template, and it's asking me to make a copy, so you can make your own unique copy of this template. I'll give you a little figure of what's going on. So I've got tabs on the bottom here. I've got sum, average, multiply, and convert. And so there's an information at the top here, explains what it is. And this is the formula, sum, and then within the sum, you put the range. The range is the alphabet, letter, and number of the box where you want the formula to start calculating. At the bottom here, you have a mission. For each student, sum the total number of minutes they spent studying for that week. So these students are reporting their amount of time studying. We do have SWD, EL, EO status for these students, so we can figure out how to play with some of that data. And this is the score that they got on a test. So we're going to see if there's anything involved in their amount of time spent studying. Does that create something? And then, hey, if we want to create some collective data for the class, can we figure out how much time total did the students study? All right. And then there's a tab. It's the same data set, but there's a different mission for average. There's a different mission for multiply. And there's a different mission for convert. Okay, and convert is a more complicated. So I'm wondering, I'm going to start with some. If not, in the next minute or so, someone shouts out or puts in the chat that you'd like me to do a different one. So if you want to see something else, please put it in the chat or shout it out. Otherwise, I'm going to do the sum. Okay. We're going to look at the sum. So for each student, sum the total number of minutes they spent studying for that week. All right. So I got this Kurt Wagner person. He starts his study time on Monday. It starts in column F. So I need alphabet and number. F4. And we're going to go to G is Tuesday, H is Wednesday, I is Thursday, J is Friday. So in K, where I have total study time, I want equals sum F4 to J4. And interestingly enough, I don't know, sometimes this works, sometimes it doesn't. It says F4 to J4, which is what I want. So I can actually just press enter if that's what I want. And there we go. And automatically, spreadsheets can anticipate what you want to change. So I'm actually going to go in. I'm going to show you this. It's probably going to make an error, but I'm going to show you this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to click this little circle at the bottom corner and drag it down. Oh, and it didn't actually, it did calculate everything correctly. So if I can check and see, it took the formula and applied it down. Over here we have Miss Catherine Pride in row 5, and everything should be 5. So F5 to J5 is correct. This next one should be F6 to J6, and you can see it's correct. So I've got the total study time here. And let's look at the bonus mission. How many minutes of total study time did the whole class complete? So I'm going to write here, total study time. And then in here, we're going to create, actually, this should be over here so that I can have it below. Equals sum K2 through K15. Let me just check. K, total study time, 2 to 15. That does look correct. So I'm going to put that there. All right. So here we go. I have all of that there. We've got about 2.5 minutes left on our time. Hope you are enjoying taking a little time with this template and figuring out how it works. I'm going to use a convert over here to turn the minutes into hours. So I'm going to put this down here, total to study time in hours. And I just want to show you how this convert function works. I'm going to put equals, convert. Here's another thing that you can do. As you see this pop-up box that comes in here, if I click down on that, it gives me an example. Convert, there's a number, and then the units, G, kg, so grams to kilograms, all right? And you will need to know what units are available. And there is actually on the convert tab, there's actually a screenshot of what that will be. So I'm going to convert K16 to put a comma. So for the next term, start unit, it is in, and this is in quotes, minutes. End unit, I'm going to put it in HR for hours. That should give me everything that I need. I'm going to press it right here. Okay. So 11.316666. So that's a, that number doesn't resolve. So let's just bring it in a few decimal places by pressing this button at the top that has a 0, decrease decimal places. Okay. So, let's increase that by 1. All right. So 11.317 hours of study total for the whole class. Pretty cool. So if I wanted to convert that automatically, I could put it off to the side where it won't get in the way of the extra students if we're adding more students in. And we could just set it up so that as the students were entering their information, the amount goes up. Right? That's our time for math type spreadsheets. So let's go on to the next one. All right, this could be used for planning, for department budgets, for helping students track their own AR study time, or finding trends in students' responses. I think when you have this kind of data and you can share it with your students, I encourage you to do so. My students actually really like hearing their stats. You know, students play video games all the time. A lot of students who are really into video games also like hearing what their data is or what their skill level is, because it's really, a lot of video games are based on stats. So I'm going to leave that open for a minute or so. Any other thoughts on how we could use this? And if you have thoughts on some of those math type functions, please put them in the chat. I'm going to just kind of move ahead a little bit while we're working on that. The next function I want to talk about is import style functions, and import style functions take information from one area and move it to another. So you can actually pull all the information that meets a certain criteria that you're looking for. And this can be a little bit confusing, so I want to jump right into this. You should also note that if you're referring to information that's on a different tab, you have to use the exclamation point in this way that's shown on slide 14. It's going to be the tab name in quotes with an exclamation point and the range end quote. So for example, if your tab was called raw data, it would be in quotes, raw data, exclamation point, range A1 to C12, end quote. And that will be used to help you pull information from a different tab. There are other types of import type functions. These are the ones I find most useful. If you're curious about VLOOKUP versus XLOOKUP, because we use VLOOKUP a lot in the PDSA world, it was kind of just the one that one of our instructional coaches really latched onto. I personally like XLOOKUP even more, and there's a great article on what's the difference between the two if you are interested. If you want to play with it, let's grab another template. So in here, we've got challenges. Let's use the VLOOKUP to search for the info that we're looking for. Let's import some contents if we're interested in doing that. And so let's go into this tablet, this template, excuse me, and try this. Now, this is long, and if you'll notice, we actually do have the same data set. I try to keep it as similar as possible. We're just studying students' study time. And we're going to look at this one right here. And I'm just going to go back to keep myself, whoops, this is the other one. All right, keep myself honest with the time. If you're looking for following along with me, please click that link that's on my slides. And the basic things you need to know about VLOOKUP is you need to figure out what we're looking for. and we need to figure out what range we're looking in. And then is sorted is in those brackets, like I said before. The default for is sorted is true. If you're not getting the answer that you're looking for, you can try searching false, and that'll give you it slightly different. In this case, our information is sorted, so we are going to keep that as the default. Okay. You need to look up the ID number of Jean Gray. So Jean Gray is over here we can definitely find her ID number because this is a small data set, but we're going to create a function that's going to look up that number for us. We know that we're going to start with doing a VLOOKUP down here at the bottom. So we're going to write here Jean Gray's ID number, just so that we know what we're looking for here. And I recommend that you label everything that you're going to be putting in your spreadsheets to be aware. And it's going to be a VLOOKUP equals VLOOKUP. All right. Search key. So the search key is going to be Jean Gray. But since Jean Gray is in C18, or not C18, Jean Gray is in A13, we can actually make it A13. So we're looking for the term that's in A13. And the range is going to be A4, because the names start on A4. A4 to, let's just go to the ID numbers, which is going to be B15. Now here's where that index idea comes up that I was mentioning before in, I think it was slide 5 with the vocabulary terms. We've created a block, and you can see the block in purple. This is the very simple block. It's 2 columns. So each block that we create has an index, meaning that each column now has a number associated with it. If we're looking for the information in number 2, the second block, it's going to be 2. The index is going to be 2. If it were a larger block, like if it went all the way down to HIJK, we could actually import other things. Like if I wanted to import her score, I could take this entire block, and now the index has 1, 2, 3. Oh, sorry, I just turned on my widgets. Sometimes I hate MacBooks. All the way down to column I. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And so we would pull 9 from that column. And I can show you that in a minute too, if you like. And then we're going to keep it with is sorted because we did sort this data beforehand. We talked about that in the session I did yesterday. If you weren't there, the slides are linked in my slideshow. So if I do that, look at this ID number. And if I look at Jean Gray, that is her ID number. Now, if I want to know the name of the student who the ID number of the person in if I wanted to create something dynamic that I could search, I could change this to let's just call it to, let's just say Jean Gray. All right. I'm going to change the search term. Instead of it being A13, I'm going to make the search term B18, which is this box down here, which means that, okay, I got the same number. I want you to notice that it's the exact same number. However, if I was going to search someone else's ID, for example, Hank McCoy, now it automatically changed the number, and whoever's ID number that is what shows up. If I want to search Kurt Wagner over here, now I've got his ID number. So now whichever thing that I put in this box is going to show up over here as the ID number. I can also import multiple rows. If I had multiple rows in my index, I could import all of their study time and their score on the test if I were to do this. The range is now column A through column I. So let's come over here. It's going to be A4 through I15. Okay. And I want the index to be 2 through I. Now I haven't done this in a while, so 2 through I. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 2 through 9. I think if I just do 2 through 9 here, it's going to give me everything. No. Okay. So 2 9? No. 2 9. Well, I could also do this 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That did not work. Okay. Okay, greater than or equal to. All right. Come back to that. Sometimes I get stuff that I used to know how to do and I haven't done it in a while, but that's the time for that one. I'll come back to that one a little bit later, and there are challenges, of course, that you can complete. As per yesterday, I actually did this as well. I highly recommend keeping something like Gemini handy. You can ask it questions about spreadsheets and it can help you guide through the process of creating a more complex formula. I'll come back to that when I have a chance to. We are getting closer, so you can create import range functions to take information from one spreadsheet to another. I want to show you that I have, wait, not this one. I have all of these different things. I want to point out some ways that spreadsheets can be used for more dynamic things. So I have this, which you can look at because I've taken all the student data off this. I help the admin at my staff, at my site, manage adjunct duty. So this right here is fully like adjunct duty information from last year. And teachers just filled out a form. It grabbed the email address automatically. And then we use the email address to dynamically import the information to the teachers. And so for that staff member, we get the total minutes. We did convert these over into hours, and it's color coded for who got the most amount of who got the high amount of hours. If your colors are green, that means you've met your or are close to meeting your adjunct duty. Blue means you went above and beyond. Red and yellow are obviously the low and middle tier. So all of this does import functions. There's some VLOOKUP stuff over here going on over here, and there's also some sum and some convert. We've got a convert function right there. If you click on the box, you can actually see if there's any particular function going on for each individual right there. So that's kind of a useful one. So I think where we're at right now, I'm going to skip the time functions because I think they're interesting but not as useful. And we've got about 10 minutes left before I give you your break. So let's go to the if and ifs functions. Those require a specific criteria. So COUNTIF is an example, a very simple example. SUMIF is another simple example. If you have numbers and you want them to sum only if they're a particular information. So an example of this would be if you just want the information if a student is an EL, or you just want the information for a student who's an SWD. You can tell the function, I just want you to calculate or give the average for this small group of people. And then you can create a dynamic calculator that's going to give you your ELs, your EOs, your SWDs or your SWD plus EL students as separate categories that you can really quickly calculate how they've done on things. So let's play with this. Again, there's a copied template. You can try it out. And I think I am going to just put this on. I think that the end of this one's going to take us right into the break. I'll be glad to demonstrate anything that I didn't get time to demonstrate during the sandbox time if you're interested. And I can also show off some cool spreadsheets that I've got going on, which are also linked in the slideshows. Feel free to organize, to explore those on your own. So we're going to go count if versus count ifs. The basic format is count if, and then you put the range and the criterion. And if it's an ifs with an S, it's range criterion 1, criterion 2, criterion 3, and they build on each other. So it will only return counts for things that are true for all of the things that you put in. Okay. How many students scored higher than a 70 on the quiz? All right. So this is the quiz. Now imagine this is times 100, 150. How many students do I have that scored higher than 70? So I'm going to do this function equals count if, parentheses. The range is going to be L4 to L16. L4, L16. The criterion is greater than, I'm using that math symbol, greater than 70. All right, and I'm going to close the parentheses, and what do we got? An error. Excellent. This is going great. Sorry, I think it needs to be in quotations because it's... Yes, okay. It needs to be in quotations. My apologies. Greater than 70. 5 students scored higher than 70, and we can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Why is it 5? 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Greater than, who do greater than or equal to 70? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 8. Why am I taking? Should be. Oh, you're right. I'm bad at math. There we go. Count the students that scored higher than 70, so it should be greater than 70. I'm sorry, I'm so bad at math. I'm just screwing up left and right, but that's a good thing to know. It's okay if you make a mistake. You can talk to people. You can consult. Again, Gemini is your best friend, non-judgmental. It'll tell you about all the mistakes you're making in math without making you feel sad. So that's there. All right, what if I want just the EOs? Let's do a sum ifs. So in this case, equals sum ifs, and I'm going to put the range again. This time, the range needs to be, all right, so this time I'm going to need to include a different range for my criteria because I want to go over to column D and get this information right here. We're still, actually, this shouldn't be sum if, I'm sorry. I'm about to make another mistake. Count if. Count ifs, all right, and then criteria range. So we're going to count ifs from L, criteria range 1. So L4 to L15 again, L4, L15. And then we're going to do the exact same thing as before. Is greater than 70, all right? Although lower, I'm sorry, it says lower than 50. So let's just follow the path here. Is less than 50, quotation, and then a comma again. And notice that it shifts over the little box that I'm showing off, shifts over to the next thing. Criteria range 2. Now we are looking for EOs. So we're going to go D4 to D15. D4. D15. Okay, notice that it gave me oh, I put 25. Sorry about that. D15. Notice that it circled this box in purple, so I know that I got the right range. And now we're going to go in quotations, EO. All right. Now, fact check me on this. Ooh. Let me see that again. EO. I did something incorrect here. Oh, here we go. Okay, so fact check me on this. 3 EOs scored lower than 50%. I got an EO down here at the bottom, 10, 30, 30. These 3 students here are EOs. So yes, that did calculate correctly. How many ELs scored lower than 30? I can take this entire formula, or scored lower than 50, copy it in, and then let's change it. Instead of EO, let's make it EL. Okay, and no ELs scored lower than 50. Let's see if that's true. Okay, yep. The lowest scoring EL in this class scored a 70. So that is correct. So getting used to this and making these calculations over and over again will help you kind of be able to do it really fast. I'm off of 3 weeks of vacation, so I'm a little bit rusty. It does happen to the best of us and the worst of us. So within this particular set of templates, we do have the sum, if, and ifs over here. There's another set of challenges and another bonus challenge here for these formulas if you want to play around with them. And we can run back and forth on a few ideas here if you're stuck on something and not sure how to move forward. So this is another thing you can do during your sandbox time if you just want to practice. So let's see. I just want to really quickly throw out there before we do get into sandbox time, because we are going to hit our 15-minute break soon. These are the really cool, weird spreadsheet functions. The sparkline creates a graph within a single cell, so you can have a trend graph for individual lines, which is pretty fun and cool. Split and join and concatenate can help you take information from multiple cells and put it together. So if you got your student names all in one, you want to separate them by first name, last name into different cells for organization purposes, you can do that with split. You can take first name and last name if it's in 2 cells and you want to bring it into 1, you can do that with join. Right and left are pretty useful for taking off things and putting on things that shouldn't be there. You can turn emails into just straight up the student's ID numbers using which one is it? Left, I believe. And concatenate can also take students' ID numbers and add at student.salinas.UHSD.org, and you end up with turning everyone's ID number into their email address. You can do that with a single formula. It's pretty cool. And there is a template for this, which you could work on during the sandbox time if you're interested. There's a really cool video too that uses Sparkline. Shout out to Marilyn Warden over at LPMS who sent me this video and gave me a geek out summer vacation around July, where I started playing around with all the stuff that's in here. A lot of great information. Some additional resources. The Google Sheets documentation tells you all the functions. This YouTube channel is not mine. It's the one that that other video I have linked came from, that has a bunch of cool time productivity type spreadsheets you can create for yourself. Previous trainings are here, and my email address. Here are some linked functions that I've created that if you're interested in learning how those work, you can check them out. You can make a copy for yourself and you can play with them or ask me questions. There's a template for using Gemini to make spreadsheet functions easier. I don't think we'll get into it now because I do need to give you your break. But if you want to play with it or you would like me to demonstrate that when we get back, I would gladly do so. If you feel like you're not coming back for the sandbox time, please let me know and I will send you a link for session feedback. If you are coming back in 15 minutes, I will see you then. So we'll come back at around 11 o'clock.